Hi, Mom. Here's the Independence Day weekend 2019 house, lawn, garden, yard tour. So we're in the backyard. The birds have been really active in the bird bath. We've had orioles visiting it pretty regularly. And as you can see, the peach tree made it through the winter. There's not many peaches on, and a lot of the lower branches did die off from the cold this winter. And there's lots of grapes on the grapevine. Here are the green giant thuyas. You may notice that there's a house behind us that wasn't there before. And these are the bushes that are going to make a nice screen. They will grow a few feet a year once they take hold. They've already grown quite a bit since they were put in last year. There's 3 large ones and one that's just a little behind the other 3. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the chickens. Here's crazy little Frida. Frida, stay there. Here's crazy little Frida.
Hi, Phoebe. Hi, Phoebus.
And there's Carly. So here's the front curb strip. I pulled out all the tall plants this spring and put in a bunch of much shorter plants. Left a few things. So we've got things like wild petunias here. See this guy blooming? And these are New Jersey tea. These guys are going to get really big. But they're right on the border, so that's okay. So I'm going to have tall plants right on the border. And these you'll be interested in. They are the wild version of your coral bells. They seem to be taking hold. They're getting a little muddied up with all the rain we've had. And this one is a downy wood mint. These guys are big blue stem. So these will be a couple of tall plants right here. The big blue stem on both sides. Cut. So over here we've got the blueberries in their raised bed that I built last year. These are the blueberries that you got us last year. And there are 3 plants in this concrete block bed. And here's the first one. There's the second. And there's the third little guy. And they seem to be coming back pretty well after the rabbits nibbled them up last year. And that I put a whole lot of peat moss in underneath and mixed in some sand, so it should be a pretty good soil mix for blueberries. So we're across the street now, and we're looking at the area that we're putting in a lot of native plants, and here's the milkweed, which are really doing well. I just saw a monarch buzz over here, and I would bet that there's some monarch caterpillars in here. And the flowers are just starting to open and starting to smell really sweet. So this is one of the areas that we're covering up with ground cover plastic. And we did that with another area, which I'll show you in a minute. And it's been covered up for this one for one season, and it takes 2 seasons. And then we've effectively gotten rid of the grass, and we can start planting the native plants that we want to put in there. So this area we planted up about a month and a half ago. We had over 100 new plants, and they really seem to be taking hold with all this rain. And what we're going to do this fall is pull up the plastic, and then we're going to put down some more native plant seeds, and that'll fill in the gaps between what we bought as plants. You can see some of these guys back here are really blooming nicely. These guys have bloomed very nicely. And this is just their first year, so they'll take off really well. This is like boneset over here. That looks good. Some grasses and sedges. And there's an aster over here. So things look very nice over here. You can hear one of the frogs in the background there. And you can see over in the water there, a turtle just dove into the water where those bubbles are. Now we're over at the community garden, and it looks like the corn's doing really well. I think we've reached knee-high by the 4th of July, just barely. That's the first bunch that I put in. There were 4 clumps of that, 4 hills of corn there. And then this stuff was planted 2 weeks later, so that spreads out our corn so it doesn't all come at once. There's another 5 hills of that. And we've got a nice big kale plant that volunteered back there. And the potatoes are looking really good. Here's the white potatoes here. They look very nice. We had potato bugs last week, and I have an organic spray that I used, and they're all gone for now. And garlic is looking good. That'll be ready in 2 or 3 weeks now. That'll start drying up and we can start pulling the garlic. I always leave a couple of milkweeds in, as long as they're not in places where they cause trouble. So that's good for the monarchs. Right here, and another little hill of them right here. And this is the pollinator bee box. There are solitary bees in there who should be out pretty soon. And they live in these little tubes. And they lay their eggs in there, and they stuff them full of pollen and put little plants on to plant leaves to seal them up. And then they'll have more bees next year. And this area is a little overgrown. We've got the tomato that Linda gave me right here. Actually, no, that's a different tomato. This is a Kellogg's yellow tomato that someone at work gave me. And I've got a basil plant right there. And there's a little pepper the same person at work gave me, but that one doesn't look very good. I need to do a little weeding in there. Inside the little enclosed area that I built to keep the rabbits from things that they like to chew on. There's a volunteer potato in here that I've let go. Actually, there's a couple, but mostly this is just for greens and that sort of thing. And you can see we've got some broccoli here, and we've got a couple of heads that are ready to pick. There's some nice broccoli, and we've got some cabbages, or some kale right here. It's doing really well. Marina puts kale in her smoothies all the time, so that's a good one to have. And some romaine lettuce that's about to head up here, which is nice. There's a little celery that Linda gave me right here. And then there's the cabbages, which are really thriving over here. You can see the standing water over here in my little, this is just, I kind of do a sort of raised bed garden where I dig a little trench for a walkway, and you can see that the walkway is filled with water. We've had so much rain lately. But these cabbages are just thriving this year. They look wonderful. I don't know what we're going to do with all this cabbage. So over here we've got some carrots that I seeded in a couple of weeks ago, which I didn't really have to water at all because we've had so much rain, which is nice. And there are little baby carrots coming up right there. I need to come in and get all these little tiny weeds out. That's the only problem with carrots, is a lot of fine weeding to do around them. So here's the tomato that Linda gave me. You can see it's got a few nice little tomatoes on it already. And over here we've got squash in a box. So we have a lot of problems with vine borers in the garden, where your squash will look great one day and the next day they just shrivel up. And that's because there's a little moth that lays an egg and the larvae eat out the center of the vines. So the way around that, the way to deal with them, is you put your squash in a box with a moth-proof cover, this row cover, and the vine borers are usually done by around this time of year. They're done laying their eggs. So now I can pull the box off, and I've got another one back here. These are summer squash back here. And this one is a winter squash, specially grown for seeds. It's a hulless, or it doesn't have any outer seed shell on it. So it's a really good pumpkin for seeds, for eating seeds, and it's a good jack-o'-lantern too. So the idea is that I plant them right next to the garlic and the potatoes and the sweet corn border up there. So once this garlic comes out in late July and the potatoes come out probably in August, these vines can just take over that whole area. So here's the sweet potatoes, all 40 or so of them. You can see they're in a raised bed, and they've got a sheet of plastic over to keep the ground nice and hot. I feel it already this morning, it's getting warm. And they seem to be doing really well. I just took the ground cover off that I normally keep over them to keep the rabbits from nibbling the leaves off, and I can see that some of the leaves have been nibbled off. I might have to sprinkle some pepper on to keep the rabbits off them. Usually around this time of the year they start growing so fast that the rabbits can't keep up with nibbling on the leaves. But this year there are a lot of rabbits. So now we're at the back path of the garden. This is the fence that we had to move when the railroad decided that they needed a larger setback. And so our water line for the garden runs back here. And that is a 1-inch plastic pipe. And then we put this rubber mat down to keep the plants from growing there so people aren't hacking around by the water line. And this goes on for a 1/4 mile. So we put in a 1/4 mile of plastic pipe and a 1/4 mile of this. We're still working on putting this rubber mat down. It's extra roofing material from roofing jobs for flat roofs, rubber mat. And so we're still working on that. We've got about over 2/3 of it done now. Here's a nice shot of the creek that runs by the house. You can see they used to have a high wall next to it made out of steel, and they've naturalized it quite a bit, where you just have some nice stones there. And it's become a lot wilder, and there's some nice flowers in there.